What's up, guys? Why is there such a stigma around red kratom? Red kratom is something that I had trialed and errored with, and there's a huge stigma around red kratom and what it does. Now, red kratom is natural. It is in the tea family is what it comes from. And there's three different types. There's red, green, and white. Red kratom, for whatever reason, has the biggest stigma, but why it has this stigma is because it simulates the similar properties of what opiates and heroin do. It actually bonds to your brain. It hits the same receptors that those do. And I have done a lot of videos on red kratom. I'm very open-minded when it comes to different things, because if something helps get someone sober or off of heroin, I'm a huge advocate for it. Red kratom does have a lot of pros and cons. It's probably one of the most dangerous, one of the scariest that I've ever encountered, mainly because I'm an addict myself. And I did 30 days of red kratom. I wanted to see if it would help with my depression, and it did. I will say this, red kratom was the greatest antidepressant that was not a prescription medication that I'd ever taken. It truly was. I would still be on red kratom, but part of my trial and error with it is I went for 30 days. And I took 4 capsules in the morning. I took 4 capsules in the afternoon. They weren't a whole lot of kratom. I did, I think it ended up being just a couple grams a day. And even with that small amount, I ended up going through withdrawals. Those withdrawals were similar to what heroin withdrawals were or opiate withdrawals, but on a very lesser scale. But I still had the restless legs. I still had the hot flashes. I still had the body aches. I still had the constipation. It was a pain. It was a nightmare. And that is one of the things I think that happens though when we have a stigma to something, is it almost attracts people to it. The one thing I will say that red kratom didn't do is red kratom didn't give me any kind of a high. What I mean by that is, yes, it calmed it all down. It made me feel good in the way of mood and all of that, but it didn't give me any of that chest high, the body high, the invincibility high. The heroin and opiates is also very known for putting you in a very lax state, a very rested state, pretty much passing out, not wanting to do anything. Everyone warned me with red kratom with that. I never experienced that with red kratom. In fact, I experienced a lot of the opposite. I experienced just a lot of energy. I was able to go through my normal day-to-day routine. And because I took Adderall, I never really experienced the true hardcore dopamine drop that I experience when I take Adderall. And I stopped taking it, of what ends up happening when the chemicals in your brain shift. I think stigmas are dangerous and needed at the same time. I don't think it's something that you should put this big fear up, because the more fear that you put up and the more that you play something up, the more it piques people's interest to try them. I will say this, when I was a kid, the scarier drugs seemed, the more I seemed to have wanted to try it. I wanted to experiment with it. That didn't deter me. The education side of it, the learning side of it, the reality side of it is actually what deterred me. And that's why if anyone's out there struggling with addiction, a lot of times people don't understand that, you can't just have one. Because what do we see? We see movies, we see all this. We don't see the real life side of it. If you are struggling out there, AA, NA, 2 of the greatest programs out there, it all comes down to support, and it comes out to, why are you using a drug, to what are you coping for? I'm not an addiction expert by any means. My drugs of choice were alcohol and cocaine. And when it came to quitting these substances, a lot were physical withdrawals, but so much were mental withdrawals. And actually having to come to terms with depression, having to come to terms with trauma, having to come to terms with life. Kratom itself, it's something I would say don't necessarily be scared of, but also make sure everyone's aware of what you're doing. It's not a drug I would say to try on your own. When I did my trial and error experience, I let my psychiatrist know. They kind of laughed at me a little bit, because it was like, okay, it's a natural substance, it's legal. Oh, I don't know why you're telling me this. But I did it just to protect myself, because I was a little bit afraid, just because of my past of being being an addict. And when you are an addict, the biggest thing is to protect your sobriety when you get to that 1 day, that 2 day, that 3 day, that 1 year, that 2 year, that 4 years. And so I did let them know. I did experience a lot of negative things with it. I did experience a lot of positive things with it. I think our stigma and how we hype it up and overplay it is a little bit too much. I do a lot of videos on Kratom. If you haven't checked out my channel before, feel free to check out my channel. Hit the like and subscribe button. I'd love to get your input and thoughts on it. But I will say this is, when you are going through your trial and error, when it comes to living every day, don't give up. And you know what? It is trial and error. What worked for somebody may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for somebody else. And that is why it's called trial and error. You are the most important person in the world, so don't stop going at it every single day. You matter. Hit the like and subscribe button, comment down below. Love to have you along for the journey.